Kei te whakarunga mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere aki nei, COVID hospitalisations could peak at 1,200 a day. So the government's announced a plan to get us through the darkest part of winter. It may sound familiar. Mask, boost and isolate. But it's the team of 5 million on a timeout. The COVID minister joins us. The price of crude oil's on a downward slide, though petrol at the pump's not getting any cheaper yet. Imagine there's a stadium. It's easy if you try. Christchurch City Council gets in tune with plans for a multi-use arena. And a husband and wife, both with terminal cancer, buy more time after hitting a crowdfunding milestone. Don't forget you can check us out live, Freeview Channel 50.
RNZ News at 5. Good afternoon. Ahi Madi ko Iwi Ashton tēnei. Masks and rapid antigen tests are being made freely available as New Zealand battles a new wave of COVID-19 and other winter illnesses. More than 11,000 new COVID cases were reported today and 23 deaths. By the end of the week, all New Zealanders will be able to apply for masks and RATs online and pick them up from a collection site. The COVID-19 response minister, Aisha Verrill, says people need to do their bit.
I know some people have said that the protections are too complicated for people, but they underestimate New Zealanders. Get vaccinated, wear a mask, stay home when you're sick, open a window.
The government is also making it easier for higher risk patients to access COVID-19 drugs such as Paxlovid. From Monday, anyone over 75 with COVID-19 will be able to get antiviral treatments without a prescription. COVID cases and staff sickness continue to cause problems at hospitals around the country. A ward at Whangarei Hospital has been closed to visitors after patients tested positive for the virus. Outpatient appointments are being postponed at Canterbury Hospital to free up health staff to work in acute care. In addition, an unprecedented number of staff are sick. Southland Hospital has temporarily closed off all of its inpatient wards to visitors due to COVID-19 numbers and capacity problems. Christchurch City Council has decided today to push ahead to build a long-awaited stadium. It comes after a recent cost increase of $150 million, taking the final price of Te Kaha to $683 million. A recent consultation on whether to approve the increased budget saw the highest public engagement in a decade, with about 3/4 of submissions supporting the stadium. Caroline Harvey-Tier, the chief executive of Venues o Tautahi, the stadium's main operator, says it will have huge economic and social benefits.
What we're seeing in the design is a really unique, competitive venue, one innovative in design, but one that is going to be uniquely local, and it is a really stunning opportunity for our region.
The stadium is set to be completed by April 2026. A critical document mapping out how the Pacific nation will navigate climate change, among other challenges, has been launched in Fiji. Pacific leaders have been in talks all day in what is the weighty end of the 51st Pacific Islands Forum in Suva. They emerged from their meeting room an hour ago to mix and mingle ahead of the official launch of the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. It cements a collective approach to all manner of regional issues affecting all island nations, from the climate crisis to peace and security. The Automobile Association is predicting chaos at petrol pumps when fuel tax relief ends. The government cut petrol taxes by 25% a litre in March as prices spiked, but this is due to end in a month. The AA's Terry Collins says there'll be an unavoidable rush at fuel stations.
It's going to be a difficult one for the government, is that if it goes on in one lump, then we can expect to have queues at the service stations, and we will expect that some of them may run dry, and it's difficult for those oil companies to fill them up quickly because they've only got a limited amount of trucks and tankers.
Energy Minister Megan Wood's office says she's not yet decided whether to extend the tax cut. Drivers in Wellington are still getting free parking across the CBD after a technical glitch earlier this morning. The glitch has caused the parking pay and display machines to operate at public holiday settings. Wellington City Council spokesperson Richard McLean says it was an unintentional freebie for the city. He expects the problem to be sorted by tomorrow morning. Mr McLean says it's hard to estimate how much money the council's lost today, but it could be in the hundreds or low thousands. To sport, with 3 Test rugby series on the line, All Blacks coach Ian Foster has rung the changes for Saturday night's decider against Ireland in Wellington. Under pressure following the All Blacks' loss in Dunedin, Foster has returned fit again lock Sam Whitelock to the starting lineup, with Scott Barrett moving to blindside flanker. Will Jordan will start on the right wing, with Sevu Reece moving to the left, while rugby league convert Roger Tuivasa-Sheck gets a potential Test debut off the bench. David Havili comes into the midfield and Nepo Laulala replaces tight head prop Ofa Tungafasi as Foster looks for more forward muscle to match the Irish.
When we don't win, there's a lot of internal reflection, and then you get into gear and start really nailing the next week. You know, we've got to show that we're smart and we're learning. So that's where I'm at. I can't wait, to play Ireland, and it's a great examination for us.
Ireland, on the other hand, have made just one injury-enforced change, with midfielder Bundy Aki coming in for Gary Ringrose. And world number 2, Rory McIlroy, intends playing boring golf to achieve the holy grail of winning the Open Championship over St Andrew's Old Course. The Northern Irishman won the 2014 Open and the USPGA Championship a month later, but hasn't added to his haul of 4 major titles since then.
You're going to have to be so smart. You're going to have to be on top of your mental and strategic game more than anything else. And that's the key this week. The guy that can have the best strategy and be in the right frame of mind is the guy that's going to come out on top.
Ryan Fox and Ben Campbell are the 2 New Zealanders in the Open, which starts tonight. That's the news.
Initiatives to confront gang violence are questioned.
This doesn't go nearly far enough. Nothing in this proposal will be scaring gangs at all.
A former detective says greater force is needed.
But what it takes is a resolute police management to actually focus on gangs and do what is required.
But Government Minister Chris Hipkins says tough talk is not enough.
This is going to be hard work, and it's going to be hard work for the police to get out there and to continue to disrupt gang activity.
Talking Tough, Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
You're on Checkpoint next with Lisa Owen. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Friday. From Northland to Taumarunui, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, the Central High Country, and in the east from Gisborne to Wairarapa. Rain from Northland to the Central High Country, spreading elsewhere this evening with some heavy falls in the north and the east. Easing to isolated showers tomorrow, but snow to 900 metres affecting the Desert Road tomorrow morning. From Taranaki to Wellington, mostly cloudy with isolated showers, fine spells increasing tomorrow. Nelson and Marlborough, mainly fine. Isolated showers tomorrow afternoon and evening. Mainly fine for Bulla Westland and Fiordland, but a few showers in southern Fiordland and developing north of Hokitika tomorrow. Canterbury and North Otago, cloudy periods and isolated showers. For the remainder of Otago and Southland, showers falling as snow to 400 metres tomorrow. And for Reokohu, the Chatham Islands, a few showers, rain for a time tomorrow morning. It's 7 minutes past 5. I'll update you with the latest news headlines and traffic at about 20 past 5.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Tonight, Christchurch, you're getting a big new stadium. Councillors have given the green light to the $600 million arena. We'll get reaction from there shortly. But first, the government has painted a worrying picture of winter hospitalisations, with Omicron and the flu set to put more pressure on an already stretched health system. It's set out the path to avoiding that, but has put its success squarely in the public's hands. Our political reporter Giles Dexter has more.
COVID-19 is back with a vengeance. A second wave about to crash on the country as it grapples already with flu and other winter illness. Modelling suggests the country's on track for more than 20,000 cases a day and a peak of 1,200 hospitalisations.
There's no doubt that this winter is one of the toughest seasons our sector has ever faced.
But Dr Aisha Verrill is standing firm. New Zealand is not moving to the toughest red traffic system, saying gathering limits will offer little benefit. Instead, she's making masks and rapid antigen tests more widely available.
Now is not the time to stop wearing masks.
The government's rolling out free medical masks for everyone and higher quality P2 and N95 masks for clinically vulnerable and high-risk individuals. Access to antivirals and the second booster has been widened. RATs will also be free and people no longer need symptoms to get them.
The public health measures in place and the actions of us all are what will make the difference here.
Dr. Ashley Bloomfield says wearing masks should be as natural as wearing a seatbelt. He knows people are letting things slip.
And now, if any of people out there are not wearing masks because it's a bit of a hassle or uncomfortable, I just want you to think of our health and disability workers who are wearing masks day in, day out during their entire time at work while they're dealing with this pressure. And my plea to you is if they can do it, then you can do it.
But going all in on do the right thing requires the public to actually do it.
Now that it's free, everyone's will be like, oh, it's so much easier to get.
I think people are over masks and testing and being locked down. I think people are getting complacent, so I think it's great.
I think people are just over it. I am, they'll just do their own thing now.
Don't know about the mask use, but the testing sounds like a good idea. That's quite prohibitive when I've got 4 children.
The Green Party says free masks is a big win and something it's been calling for a long time. Its COVID-19 response spokesperson Tiano Tuiono would like to have seen N95s for everybody, a plan to improve ventilation standards and mandatory masks in schools to stop people getting sick in the first place.
We are seeing a move away from the team of 5 million to the team of business as usual. We've got to get back to the team of 5 million. We've got to think about this collectively.
Otago University epidemiologist Professor Michael Baker believes there's only one reason the government hasn't enforced masks in school: politics.
The only way we can avoid this is to rapidly dampen down transmission. But we want to do it in a way that allows us to keep going to work and school and keep socialising. The only way I know we can do that rapidly is with mass masking introduced immediately.
But for now, the government's sticking to the line of personal responsibility and appealing to Kiwis' better nature.
COVID-19 Response Minister Aisha Verrall concedes actual daily COVID case numbers are likely twice the reported figures, but the government has stopped well short of further mask mandates.
Lisa, what we know is that people have probably got used to where we were, say, a month ago when cases were low. We wanted to make it clear that that's not the case now. Case numbers are going up. Hospitals and rest of the health system are under pressure. And we need to redouble our efforts to make sure that we're using all the effective tools we have to keep COVID cases low and people out of hospital.
So you're giving them a reality check. But what about the reality you're seeing every day? What do you think of the level of mask wearing?
Yes, that's right. It's not good enough, and that's why we need to make sure, as government, we're eliminating any barriers to to wearing masks, and we're making them more available when people pick up rapid antigen tests. They'll also get a set of masks, and medically vulnerable people will be able to access N95 through those channels as well.
Not good. You're a doctor. Can you be more specific? What do you mean by not good? When you observe people on the streets, what exactly are you seeing? How would you rate our mask use?
I go to the shops and I see people not wearing masks in those places. You see most people on planes that I've taken are compliant with the guidance, though I've seen 1 or 2 exceptions with the requirement, I should say, but I've seen 1 or 2 exceptions to that too.
I just want to quote your mask advice in your press release today. It says, wear a mask in many or most indoor settings. So which is it, many or most? And which ones?
So people need to wear masks in transport when they're on public transport, when they're indoors, when they're in aged care facilities and healthcare facilities, and also when they're in retail environments and the workers in hospitality too.
Wouldn't it just be simple to make it mandatory to wear a mask in all indoor settings outside of your home? Simple message.
We do encourage mask wearing in indoor spaces, but no, it is not simple, and it impacts the running of many businesses, and we need people to take a pragmatic approach to this and to be wearing masks whenever they can indoors.
So when you say you'd like them to wear them, you actually your preference is that people would, in all indoor circumstances, wear a mask. Is that your absolute preference?
That will certainly, wearing masks indoors is our recommendation. That will help bring down COVID. Obviously, they are mandated in a narrower range of settings.
So the reality is worse than the official numbers, right? What do the wastewater test results tell you about what actual infection rates are?
Certainly, wastewater shows a trend that will still increasing COVID cases in most of the areas that we're sampling.
But it's estimated that it's actually twice the rate that we're seeing, isn't it?
Oh, indeed.
Minister?
Yeah, that is the estimate, that we may have twice as many cases than we know about.
So free rat tests, that doesn't mean people are going to use them. Do you accept that some people simply do not want to know if they're COVID positive? They don't want to stay home and they don't want to follow the rules, so they're not going to test?
Oh, look, I think that will be a minority of people. I think many people have taken up the offers of rapid antigen tests that were made more well with this additional freeing up of their availability. I think the vast majority of people want to do the right thing.
Why not make masks mandatory in schools? Because, I mean, you seem to be suggesting that people are getting infections at home or at work. But if you're getting infections at home, someone's bringing it home, aren't they? And we're seeing a lot of cases just in our workplace where people are getting it from their kids who are getting it from school events.
Well, I think there's transmission occurring in a wide range of settings, homes and workplaces of a range of sizes and schools. And the last set of advice that we had on this, schools weren't out of proportion contributing to transmission compared to other places. However, we want to make it very clear, our recommendation to schools is that children are masked.
Should school camps and assemblies still be happening with the rates we're seeing? What
We've asked is for the Ministry of Health to work more closely with education so that when schools come back, that there's a clear guidance for them. Of course, in 2 weeks' time, we could be in a different situation. So I think that specific guidance on large gatherings at schools will come through.
Minister, your recommendation is that people wear masks. You stood on that podium today and says it lowers your chance of catching COVID by around 50%. So you believe strongly in this message. I suggest to you right now, your recommendations are based on politics rather than health, given what you have said.
Look, the health evidence for masking is very clear. That's why I'm recommending it.
If we get to 1,200 hospitalisations a day, is that a crisis?
Yeah, look, I think we're working very hard to make sure that we're doing everything we can to avoid that scenario from playing out.
But if it does play out, Minister, I understand you're doing everything you can to avoid it, but that is the forecasting. So if 1,200 people are hospitalised every day with COVID, do you regard that as a crisis?
I think it's really important that we respond to the very real pressures that there are in our health system. And I've been in close contact with healthcare workers as well as following the statistics that we get to make sure that we know what the facts are and that we respond to them and fix the problems that exist. And a lot of what we set out today is designed to do that.
And that's COVID Response Minister Aisha Verrill. It is 18 minutes past 5. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Councillors have been hearing submissions for much of the day. Some, like Peter Morrison's from Hospitality New Zealand, took a creative approach. Christchurch councillors have given the green light to a multi-use arena that's been 10 years in the making. The fierce debate over Te Kaha has centred around its price tag, which is $683 million. The project board negotiated a fixed price contract for the 30,000-seat multi-use arena following a $150 million budget blowout. Councillors have been hearing submissions for much of the day. Here's Peter Morrison from Hospitality New Zealand. He took a creative approach.
Imagine there's a stadium. It's easy if you try. No empty land wasted. Above us only a roof.
Sing it with us. Our reporter Tessa Guest joins us now from Christchurch. OK, Tessa, this was a hotly debated issue. How did it go down in the end?
Yeah, well, in the end it passed really easily with only 3 votes against from councillors. And there was a sense in the room that this would be the case. After a recent consultation, which had almost 30,000 submissions in it from public, 77% of people were in support of the stadium being built with an increased budget. So there wasn't really any surprise that this was the case. And this is what Mayor Leanne Dalzell had to say.
I was kind of hoping that this would be the decision, and I was relatively confident that it would be, but it was a good result.
Yeah, and it was a really unusual, I guess, meeting today with the public deputations that you had. There was singing, there was things you'd never seen before. How did it feel to have such an unusual setting for this decision?
I have to take my hat off to Peter Morrison from the Hospitality Association. I haven't seen anything like that. I absolutely wasn't expecting anything like that, but I think that he set a tone for the meeting itself, and I tried to do that at the beginning as well, just to remind councillors that we are all here with legal obligations as well as accountability to our communities, and it's important to get that balance right.
Okay, so what does this mean for ratepayers?
Yeah, so this budget increase could mean a rate rise of $144 per year for the average household in Christchurch. And there was a lot of debate about that. Some councillors were concerned that struggling households wouldn't be able to meet those numbers anymore, and more support was needed for households to meet those numbers. But there are still a lot of financial decisions to be made, and a lot of the responsibility will be given to the next council once elections happen.
And I know there's been a lot of talk about it being a sports stadium, but it's not just for sport, is it?
No, so while it will be home to Crusaders matches and All Blacks test matches, there'll be a lot of variation in what is hosted at the stadium. Obviously there'll be kind of the mega events, the concerts, the headline acts, and there was a lot of talk actually about esports events. Councillors were talking about how they're becoming frequently more popular by the year, with audiences of up to 500 million globally. And so because this is a new stadium with new infrastructure, there's quite a lot of potential to host different events like that, and so there's a lot of excitement about the variety of events that could be hosted at Te Kaha.
Thanks, Tessa. That's Tessa Guest joining us live from Christchurch. Christchurch is getting its stadium after it got the green light today. It is almost 22 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoints on RNZ National. Well, homai o whakaaro, we'd love your feedback. Well, tell us about the stadium. So it's got the green light. Do you agree with it? Good or bad decision? Let us know your thoughts. And also the announcement from the government today, forecasting very high numbers of COVID and potential hospitalisations. Have they gone far enough with the measures? Free RAT tests and masks, but no further mandates. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at checkpointrnz or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's get to the headlines. Ko iwi anō tēnei.
Lisa, the government has today announced that masks and rapid antigen tests will be made freely available, so anyone can apply online and then pick up a kit. People are being urged to do their bit and mask up as the country grapples with a second wave of COVID-19 at the same time as a bad flu season and other winter illnesses. And Pharmac is widening access to 3 early COVID-19 treatments to try to keep people out of hospital. The agency's chief medical officer says the antivirals reduce the risk of severe illness, which helps take pressure off the health system. The Ministry of Health has reported 11,382 COVID-19 cases today and another 23 deaths. 765 people with the virus are in hospital. Christchurch City Council has decided today to push ahead to build a long-awaited stadium. It comes after a recent cost increase of $150 million, taking the final price of Te Kaha to $683 million. The latest consultation on the project saw the highest public engagement in a decade, with about 3/4 of submissions supporting the stadium. The Automobile Association says the end of fuel tax relief will be chaotic at the pumps and some may run dry. The government cut petrol taxes by 25 cents per litre in March as prices spiked, but this is due to end in a month. And protesters have stormed the office of the Sri Lankan Prime Minister after he was made caretaker leader of the country. A deadline for the President, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, to resign has expired and he has fled Sri Lanka. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, no delays on the main routes to report, apart from in Canterbury for Littleton Tunnel on State Highway 74. That's closed tonight between midnight and 5 a.m. I'll update you with the latest headlines and traffic at about 5:40.
Kia ora rā e ho. Brent crude has been on a slide, but petrol prices at the pump aren't budging. Brent closed below $100 a barrel for 2 trading days in a row, the first time in 4 months. But at the pump, the price of 91 is still averaging more than $3 a litre. Well, joining us now is Govt General Manager Dave Bodger. Dave, you know the drill. People will be in their cars with their radio on, listening to this, grumbling to themselves, saying, yep, you ratchet the price up quickly, but you never pull it down just as fast. What do you say?
Yes, that is a fair critique. It's a critique that's been made of the oil industry forever, I think. Look, Lisa, from Govt, we're happy to stand on our record of 20 plus years of doing the best we can with fuel prices. Your lead-in note before was talking about when the excise tax, look, when that came down 29 cents, including GST, we moved at midnight after it dropped at midnight at significant cost to us. So look, we will look to move down as soon as we can from our point of view.
Oh, when's as soon as you can? They're leaning into the radios now, Dave.
They're leaning into the radios. Look, it will depend on where refined prices are moving at Singapore, Lisa. But look, we've got empathy, and look, I know what it feels like to be sitting there balancing your budget, trying to sit there, and then all of a sudden you're spending $20 or $30 a week more on petrol and diesel just to get yourself to work. It's tough, but look, we will do what we can, as we have for a long time.
Okay, Dave, you're on a bit of a dodgy phone there, so just wiggle it around a bit. Want to hear what you've got to say. So that's the specific. The general, when the price goes down by barrel for Brent crude, what is the time it takes to come down the pipe generally, and why does it seem to take so long?
Look, in general, the New Zealand market responds, and I'm standing on one leg, so hopefully the reception's better.
Much better.
The New Zealand market responds sort of 2 days to a week after the Singapore market responds. Now, that is the market for refined product out of Singapore, not the actual Brent crude, because there are refiners in the middle that are refining the fuel and making money and marking it up as well.
Okay, so in the reverse, the stuff that's in the pumps right now, how long ago would you have purchased that?
Oh, look, we will have purchased that, some of it in May and some of it in June.
Right.
And look, we carry a substantial inventory, and that's just part of doing business. We need that to guarantee we've got a business going forward.
So is it your expectation that by next week people will be seeing a bit of a softening of prices at the pump?
Look, cross fingers, my crystal ball's been broken for years, and goodness knows what am I allowed to call them madmen like Putin may do, where hopefully there's a resolution to conflict in the Ukraine that will open supply. It will be much better for petrol pricing, not as good for diesel pricing. There's still some fundamental problems in that market, but look, that would be some relief immediately. But if that's going to happen, you please tell me.
Yeah, well, the thing is, world leaders expect the war in Ukraine to rage on for some time. So how volatile is the market?
Oh, very. I mean, look, we've been seeing swings in the last few weeks. Look, the markets generally move, dollars single digit a barrel, and higher single digits is a lot. Sometimes they've been moving up $10 a barrel one day, down 12 the next. It's been significant volatility. So anybody, I think, who tells you they can read it, they must be on some form of substance.
So, given what you're saying about volatility, the petrol, the fuel subsidy, it ends in August, right? Does it need to continue? This is a double barrel, Dave. Does it need to continue? And if it doesn't, how should they take it off? Because we're hearing that you're going to be crushed in the rush if they just get rid of it overnight.
if I can take that in two parts. Look, the keeping it going, that's the government's call. We've got to balance the exchequer. It's expensive for them to do it, but it's a huge impact on the motorist, and it's very well received by the motorist. How to take it off? We've been counselling the government for some time on various options for that. But yeah, look, if there's a known time, there will be problems at the pump. Look, in early March, there was discussions on prices going up in a hurry, and there was a rush on the bowsers then across all brands, and that was bloody difficult for lots of people.
Appreciate your time, Dave. That's Dave Bodger, who's the General Manager of Gull. It's 29 minutes past 5, which means it's time for the business news. Ko taku hoa e nai ko Anand Zaki. Anand, overseas visitors are making a comeback. Well, more of them, I suppose, to be specific.
Kia ora, Lisa. Yeah, that's right. Well, with the border opening up, perhaps not surprising here, but yes, the return of overseas visitors is gaining momentum. We had the data from Stats NZ, and we just had just over 72,000 foreign tourist arrivals in May, and we're now at a third of pre-COVID levels, so still some way to go. Australian arrivals are perhaps not surprisingly again making up the bulk of those. But on the other hand, departures from New Zealand is outpacing arrivals. There were more than 110,000 departures in May. But that's still 40% of pre-pandemic levels. Now, that's coincided with Auckland Airport today saying that their international passenger numbers are about 40% of what they were 2 years ago. And we spoke to Infometrics principal economist Brad Olson, a familiar voice to many of you. He told us that there are some reassuring signs that tourism is recovering, but there's still room for improvement. He also told us that there needs to be some caution about how quickly we think things might bounce back, because we're actually still in the traditional quiet period for tourism, which is the winter, of course. And there's also some caution about how firm summer numbers might be, because it's still very early days. But there's also the warning that the tourism industry could be left scrambling to find people at the end of the year if arrivals exceed expectations. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on, given the labour market shortages that we always hear about in recent times.
And Anand, tell us about this Kiwi probiotics maker, which is having a bit of a business model shake-up.
Yeah, it's a small Dunedin-based company called Bliss Technologies. They're publicly listed. They make a range of probiotics-based products for your mouth and throat. Now, they had a bit of a rough time in their 2022 financial year. They posted a loss of $2.7 million. They just weren't able to get going. They said COVID restrictions were hampering their international networking, which was a big blow for them. So that's meant that they are narrowing down their operational focus, focusing on business-to-business deals, moving away from direct selling to consumers, except for those in New Zealand and those in the United States on Amazon. Now, unfortunately, the move is going to mean some job losses. They said staff consultation is underway. We don't yet know how many positions have been affected, but we've been told it's a small number. But look, financially, they've had a better start to the 2023 year. The revenue is up by more than a quarter. And they hope to have the new business model in place by the end of March next year.
And Anand, should we take a spin around the markets, please?
Yeah, NZX Top 50 closed up 78 points, or 0.7%, 11,188. New Zealand dollar is trading at 61.3 US cents, 90.5 Australian. That's after the Aussie dollar appreciated following stronger than expected job numbers there.
Ngā mihi Anand Zaki there with our business news. Auckland dairy owners are counting the cost of protecting their businesses and in some cases their homes from ram raid-style attacks. Cars have become the weapon of choice among some thieves, with multiple ram raids weekly in Auckland. Now shopkeepers are forking out thousands for everything from steel roller doors to rows of bollards. Here's our reporter Nick Trubridge and cameraman Nick Monroe.
Alpesh Patel is counting the cost of barricading himself in. These aren't normal business costs. Stock, insurance, salaries. We're talking steel roller doors and framing. Mr Patel's now looking at having metal beams made. All of it designed to protect his livelihood from those wielding cars as weapons.
Even last night I can't sleep after happening the ram raid front opposite my shop. So still we feeling, because sometimes when we listen the music like a police siren and like that, then we say, oh, so what happened, something wrong. Then we come outside and see what's wrong, what's going on.
Mr Patel's store sits across the road from Elizabeth Dairy, whose owners were terrorised earlier this week as 10 youths smashed into their ground floor store. Both businesses have something in common. They want bollards installed outside their stores to block would-be attackers. Alpesh Patel tells me he first raised it 6 years ago. Still, the footpath remains bereft of defences.
I called them 2016 and still somebody take all the details and everything and say, oh, call you back. When 3-4 weeks nobody can answer, so I call back again and they said, oh, okay, still in processing. Then I wait another 2 weeks and then say, oh, again is in processing.
So he's been back on the ringer with AT and says he's been sent further details. But Mr Patel says he was left with the impression priority will be given if his store is hit. Auckland Transport's own website states while it generally doesn't install bollards outside businesses, it'll consider them when a site's experienced ram raiding or repeated vehicle accidents.
I have to wait for that and somebody hit. What can I do for that? I can't wait for that one, you know.
Auckland Transport says it has no record of an application from Mr Patel. However, if a request was made a few years ago, it may have been rejected as AT wasn't supportive of footpath bollards for building protection at that time. Mr Patel says he spent about $4,500 installing his steel doors. He's also taken a leaf from a bottle store across the road and is looking to install metal beams as barriers.
I have to pay because if I wait for the council or police or anybody, so it hit my shops and finally I have to pay. So it's better to take action right now, you know.
Across town at Salisbury Superette, his brother-in-law, Hitesh Patel, has done a bit of DIY, installing several bollards along his shop front off his own bat.
I have to spend like $1,200 for the bollards, and single roller door is cost you $3,000.
So we're talking upwards of $10,000?
Yeah. If you want to do only for the front side, then you have to spend 10 grand for make sure you're safe.
Hitesh's shop was ram raided a few years back. The bollards have stopped crime of that nature, but he says it remains a grim time to be a dairy owner.
As the owner of the store, we can't sleep peacefully. Every 2-3 hours we just woke up, check the cameras, everything all right. But that's the way right now, our life right now, you know.
Much of the damage remains obvious as we drive Auckland streets. Many dairies remain partially exposed, plywood sheets providing a thin barrier as owners wait weeks, sometimes months, for a fix. We're now at Shivside Dairy in Kingsland. It's still completely boarded up a month and a half on from being ram raided. Now, Auckland Transport has promised support for businesses like this. It says it'll consider putting bollards in. But how many applications has it actually processed? A spokesman told us AT's working on 5 applications across Auckland and is dealing with another 5 inquiries. We asked how many applications it's approved in the last 24 months, but got no response. As for Alpesh Patel's impression bollards could be installed if he was targeted, AT told us anyone could apply for protection at any time.
And let's get to some of your feedback now. Just a reminder, if you were listening to that item from our Nix, you can check out the video version, which will be on our webpage. On the subject of COVID, a number of you getting in touch with the government pushing the message of masks today. They're going to be free to everyone as well as RAT tests. This listener says, I work as a teaching assistant at a Christchurch primary school. Very few of our children wore masks last term. Our staff and students were decimated with illness, both COVID and winter flus, to the point where some say we had 40 children to a class because we couldn't get enough relievers. Have some respect, Minister Verrill. Mandate school masks. You are crushing our workforce. Jane says, make oral antivirals available to all healthcare workers and teachers regardless of age. They work so well and quickly. It makes sense, and it's something that the government can do right now. Stephen says, wear a mask and it goes over your nose. Yeah, funny thing, Stephen, we've been talking about that a lot today. Stephen reckons we need ads for this instead of Road to Zero ads that he reckons are infantile. Francesca says, can you not imagine the public outcry if the government dares to try making masks mandatory? It is a no-win situation. Steve says, mandatory masks, who's going to police it? In schools, fair enough, but in the public domain, nah, impossible. Another person's got in touch to say, why is there an obsession with getting people to use the word crisis? It's just a word. If it's just a word, I wonder why they won't say it. Anyway, it doesn't change what's happening on the ground. Stadium crisis, they reckon. And this one, before we move on, why do I get the feeling that the team of 5 million has been left to dissolve into 5 million individuals? No team. It seems like the government is running scared of another revolt, such as we saw in Wellington in February. It is almost 20 to 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Do keep your feedback coming. You can text us on 2101. Petrol, COVID, the stadium in Christchurch, whatever is on your mind. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Anea iwi mina pita pita kōrero.
Kia ora, Lisa. The COVID-19 Response Minister, Ayesha Verrill, says freely available masks and COVID tests will help keep the health system afloat. She told Checkpoint that the level of mask wearing isn't good enough and recommends masks are worn indoors, but says it's not simple to make that mandatory. Anyone can now apply for the rapid antigen tests and masks online. COVID cases and staff sickness continue to cause problems at hospitals around the country. A ward at Whangarei Hospital has been closed to visitors due to COVID infection, and outpatient appointments are being postponed at Canterbury Hospital. Meanwhile, Southland Hospital has temporarily closed off all of its inpatient wards to visitors due to COVID-19 case numbers. The government's fuel tax relief, put in place when prices spiked in March, is due to end in a month. The Automobile Association says there'll be an unavoidable rush at fuel stations when the tax cut ends, and some may run dry. Gull General Manager Dave Bodger told Checkpoint the international market is very volatile and it's nearly impossible to predict what will happen to fuel prices. And a critical document mapping out how Pacific nations will navigate climate change, among other challenges, has been launched in Fiji. Pacific leaders have been in talks all day in what is the weighty end of the 51st Pacific Islands Forum in Suva. The document, called 2050 Strategy for the Blue Pacific Continent, cements a collective approach to all manner of regional issues. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic in the main centres. In Auckland, a crash is now blocking Queenstown Road near the roundabout intersection of Beechcroft Ave and the State Highway 20 southbound on-ramp. Buses are being rerouted and some stops will be missed. In better traffic news, a massive slip north of Whitianga has finally been cleared, and just in the last 40 minutes that road on State Highway 25 has been reopened. Our next full bulletin of news and weather is at 6.
Thanks, Evie. As we've been reporting, the price of 91 at the pump is still stubbornly sitting around the $3 mark, despite the recent slump in the price of Brent crude. As well as that, the 25-cent tax relief is due to end in 4 weeks. Ane te kaiwi poata, Sam Ollie.
Having to share rides and ask for rides wherever I go, it can get a bit embarrassing, and it's cutting into my food prices, it's cutting into my budget, it's really affecting us in every possible way.
It's changed the way I travel now. I'm more conscious of where I'm going.
It makes me realise that saving is very important. Definitely with emergencies, things like that, petrol is essential. And seeing that...
You're hearing from motorists in Otangare, a Whangarei suburb where the median annual income is just $17,500. But filling up a 50-litre petrol tank with 91 costs more than $150 at the closest station today.
Well, because I do a lot of travelling down and up the line, we're looking at spending nearly $300 just to do that trip to Hamilton.
It's quite a sad situation, really, when you think about it. It feels like it's only going to get worse, though. It doesn't feel like there's anything that's going to change to make it better.
I don't know what's going to happen when the taxes and stuff go up, and that will really worry me even further.
Why are our petrol prices stubbornly high despite Brent crude oil prices dropping? University of Auckland Business School Emeritus Professor Basil Sharp explains the flow-on effects can take weeks.
The supply chain is just a cascading series of contracts going right back to the producers of oil coming out of the ground. And so it takes time for that to work its way out.
The Automobile Association's principal policy advisor, Terry Collins, says the market is currently very volatile.
There's a lot of investors and basically gamblers who bet that the price of oil will be at a particular price sometime in the future. There's a lot of those people who started selling very quickly because they're worried that there will be a recession and that the price of oil will drop. However, demand has still been fairly consistent and rather high, and supply is still tight.
And he doubts the price of 91 fuel will fall below $2.90 per litre in Aotearoa this year.
There's still very high refining costs, very high shipping costs. It's very difficult to get tankers to move the product, and our exchange rate is rather low.
The government took action in March, cutting fuel taxes by 25 cents per litre, but the relief is due to end on August 15, a month tomorrow.
It's going to be a difficult one for the government, is that if it goes on in one lump, then we can expect to have queues at the service stations, and we will expect that some of them may run dry, and it's difficult for those oil companies to fill them up quickly because they've only got a limited amount of trucks and tankers to do that, and if it happened nationwide, that would put a strain on that logistics.
When asked if the government is considering extending the tax cut, Energy Minister Megan Woods' office said she was monitoring fuel prices, but so far had not decided on an extension. The average New Zealand household spends 4.5% of their income on petrol.
It's 5:45. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. A husband and wife, both with terminal cancer, have passed a major milestone, crowdsourcing enough money for a year of unfunded treatment as they battle to live as long as they can for their young sons aged 9 and 11. Earlier this week, we brought you the story of Graham and Mary Brooks-Smith, who were diagnosed within months of each other and given less than a year to live. They're having funded treatment, including chemotherapy, but are fundraising for other options like immunotherapy to give them more time. And time costs more than $200,000 a year for treatment for both of them. But when we caught up with Graham this afternoon, they'd already hit over $227,000.
Quite humbling, actually. It's just a short amount of time, and it's just come through to meet our first target. And our first year of treatment will be supported by that money, and all of it will be spent, obviously, towards Mary and my treatment. It's the second year, then we'll be looking at more funding, of course, because it's going to be ongoing. Mary looking at $2,200 every 3 weeks, and other medical costs on top of that for me and both of us. And so it just goes on. And I've talked to a medical professional, and he said up to 3 years of immunotherapy will be required. And that's $2,200 every 3 weeks. So it's quite a lot of money, obviously. So we may have to go for a second round, unfortunately. But that's the way it is, isn't it, with lack of funding from Pharmac.
That's a stark reality. So even though you've reached your first goal, that $225,000, and I don't mean to be so blunt, but it buys you just one more year of life, in essence.
Well, it's a bit more than that, I expect, because it really nails the cancer very quickly at the beginning stages. The treatment's very effective at the beginning, and it tails off, unfortunately, as time goes on. The cancer gets more resistant, so then obviously the treatment needs to be changed. However, meantime, that money is just outstanding. It's going to give us an opportunity to extend our lives for the foreseeable future anyway, but then we'll have to keep on going with the treatment for a long period of time after that.
Yeah, so that's $220,000 worth of kindness.
Absolutely.
So how much comfort does that give you right now?
Oh, it's immense. It's immeasurable. The financial stability is just given us new hope and new lease of life, just to face the future, that we're actually not going to be ruined financially by these medical expenses, and that we can give our kids a future and going forward by being there, by being present, of course, and alive, but also we can give them what they need as we go forward. It's just wonderful to be able to support them and see them grow.
Does it take a little bit of stress off you and Mary?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge burden taken off our shoulders, as you can imagine. And this is just one big problem after another. And cancer is certainly enough stress in one's life as it is, especially with both of us having to go through it at the same time. And the stress in the family is immense. But with the financial burden as well, it was getting overwhelming. And with that taken off our shoulders for the first year, it's been absolutely amazing.
What would you like to say to the people who've given?
God bless you all. Thank you so much. Words can't describe how much we appreciate everything you've done for us, and the generosity is immeasurable. I just really appreciate everything, or Mary and I appreciate everything you've done for us. It gave us a new opportunity with our extending our lives and to spend time with our children.
And that's Graham Brooks-Smith. Let's get to some of your feedback now, more on the COVID situation and the government's response today to rising case numbers. This listener says, free masks and rats from the government, great. What about the businesses who purchased hundreds of thousands of dollars of these and now can't sell them? Will the MOH purchase this stock before I have to lay off staff? And Ruth got in touch to say the political decision to make masks free won't do a thing. Those who refuse to wear them won't avail themselves of the free ones. There seems to be a reluctance to face the increasingly difficult situation. Head in the sand stuff, says Ruth. Christchurch councillors have finally approved the multi-use arena with the heavy price tag of $683 million. It will be a 30,000-seat arena for sports and concerts. It's been an issue that's got strong views on both sides, but now has the green light to happen. Peter Morrison is from Hospitality New Zealand and was one of several submitters at the meeting today, and this is what he went with.
Imagine there's a stadium. It's easy if you try. No empty land wasted. Above us only a roof.
And Peter joins us now. Hey Peter, what was that?
That was me doing a submission and something different because we needed to get the attention of the councillors.
Where did you...
Where did I what, sorry?
Where did you draw your inspiration from?
I play piano, and it's one of my favourite songs. You know, I'm of that era, born in 1957, so the Beatles was, when I was a young kid, was the big thing in 64. Yeah.
But you didn't manage to get a piano into the council room?
No, I think they've already got to spend too much money on a stadium. They wouldn't buy a piano for me.
How long did it take you to whip up your version of Imagine?
I started on Tuesday night, yeah. And my wife said, "Don't be so stupid." But I said, "No, I'm going to do it." And she now sees all the social media feedback, and she said, "Oh, well, maybe you were right."
Yeah, it's a pretty gutsy move. How did you warm your pipes up?
I had a cup of coffee.
And you certainly did get people's attention. Just watching that video, there was a woman sitting to your right. Who was she? Because her eyes were...
He's our regional manager.
Did she know it was coming?
Yeah, I told her this morning at 9:30, and we did it at just after 10. So
she was good.
She was good, and I asked. She actually read the series bit out, the words that I'd written, and I said, and I will follow her. And they didn't know what I was going to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, it was kind of risky because you could have turned the crowd against you, Peter.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was very positive that we were going to get it through, and because we can't go back now, waste any longer doing it, and how much they've already spent, $40 million on just the consultants and all the paperwork, the groundwork, and all that sort of stuff. So if they didn't go ahead with it, and the government could take their money back, and also the land back that they gave us. So I was very confident that we were going to go through, yeah.
You said you got a lot of feedback. What are people saying?
Oh, they said, a lot of them are saying, you won't be the first act at the stadium. and some of them are saying, most of them are saying, great, you've certainly got a lot of, you got their attention. So there's positives and negatives, but most of the negatives are tongue-in-cheek.
You could be the curtain raiser, or the lead up to the main act.
Oh, I told one of them that said that. I said, well, I've already been approached from Auckland. I'm not mucking around in Christchurch. I'm going right to the top. I'm going to Auckland.
Do you have anything else in your repertoire? What's your go-to karaoke?
I'm a Frank Sinatra sort of person. So,
yeah?
Yeah, and my mother's favourite song was Moon River, so I'm a bit I like the old ballads and stuff, yeah.
So could you crack out Moon River? Could you give us a couple of bars?
Moon River, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday. Old dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever I'm going your way. I'm going back into the bar to have a drink now.
Thank you, Peter. Well done. Appreciate your time. That's Peter Morrison from Hospitality New Zealand. He's not just a one-trick pony, as you can hear there. Gender issues, family violence and supporting more Pacific women into leadership roles have been key themes at the Pacific Islands Forum. The Fiji government and women's groups have welcomed a $12.6 million boost towards its Gender Action Program by the New Zealand government. Pacific leaders understand the urgent need to improve services and opportunities for women, not only in Fiji, but the wider Pacific region, especially around gender-based violence. RNZ Pacific's Alicia Foon is in Suva.
In and around the grand walls of the Pacific Island Forum, leaders have been discussing a host of issues, as well as regional security and climate change. Women's rights and gender-based violence has been made a priority. At a breakfast talanoa, the Fiji government and women's groups gathered with Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern as she pledged more than $12 million to support women in Fiji. Fiji Women's Rights Movement Director Nalini Singh says the funding will go towards supporting women and families within vulnerable communities across Fiji.
In terms of the work that we do, well, it's not done yet. If we're talking about indicators, we have to look at the violence against women. Doing, well there. If you're looking at women in leadership indicators, there's still a lot more to do. Because we need to increase women's representation in all levels, not just be looking at Parliament, but we need to be looking at, other bodies and committees and local level leadership as well.
Fiji's Minister for Women, Rosie Akbar, says major cultural shifts must take place to provide more freedom, rights and safety for women.
We not only need to inspire them, but we need to provide them with the aspirations as to what is it in for them. And I think personally that many women are hesitant to step up to leadership positions. They have the education background, they have the capabilities, but as a nation, we need to recognize more women for the work that they do.
Singh says Fiji gets minimal funding from the UN towards gender equality, and this will make a difference. It's also the first time a female minister has represented the Cook Islands at the Pacific Island Forum. Cook Islands Secretary of Foreign Affairs and Immigration, Te Paru Herman, shared some insights.
I come from a country where the role of women in society has always very much been one of, I think, a proactive involvement, including in leadership role in the running of affairs, whether it be the family unit, whether it be the village, the community, and in recent times how government operates, and including in the political sphere. I think for the Pacific region, each country has their own societal value system and their own way of operating.
She says Pacific leadership comes in all forms and levels.
And for a region that puts primacy on the family unit, the leadership that women bring to family units transcend into village, transcend into our churches, transcend into our communities, and transcend upwards. Is there more that can be done? I think absolutely.
The Pacific region is slowly but surely addressing deeply rooted issues, transforming culture, and acknowledging there needs to be more progress made from the family unit to the decision-making table.
Let's get to some of your feedback now. We were talking about the Christchurch Stadium with Peter Morrison, who's from Hospitality New Zealand and is rapt to be getting the stadium. Not everybody that keen. This one in from Sally. In Christchurch, there's no hospital outpatients nor elective surgery, but there's going to be a very flash sports stadium. Strange upside down situation. P.S. Children need flu and full COVID vaccinations. Do many have neither? Masks are not enough, says Sally. Someone else has got in touch to say at least the cost of the stadium is a lot less than the cancelled cycleway on the Harbour Bridge. And another person says Forsyth Bar Stadium in Dunedin was costed at $200 million fixed price, but overran by $20 million. Why does the Christchurch Stadium cost 3 times that amount for only 5,000 more seats? Mike is gutted by the stadium vote. A Hospo New Zealand rugby beat-up foisted on ratepayers without zero critical analysis in the media. A beat-up. The 77% in favour, skewed by age and gender, doesn't represent rate-paying populations, says that listener. And on COVID, this person says, fantastic that the government's done exactly what I wanted. Free masks and rats.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening. Kia ora tātou. Ko iwi Ashton tēnei. The COVID-19 Response Minister, Ayesha Verrill, says she encourages everyone to wear masks when indoors if possible. But it's not simple to make that mandatory. Masks and rapid antigen tests are being made freely available as New Zealand battles with a resurgence of COVID-19 and other winter illnesses. The epidemiologist, Michael Baker, says that doesn't go far enough and mask mandates should be extended to cover nearly all indoor environments. Dr. Verrill disagrees.
No, it is not simple, and it impacts the running of many businesses, and we need people to take a pragmatic approach to this and to be wearing masks whenever they can indoors.
Anyone can now apply for rats and masks online and then pick up the kits from a collection site. A ward at Whangarei Hospital has been closed to visitors after patients tested positive for COVID-19. Just this week, over 200 new cases have been reported daily in Northland. Haisa Almeida has more.
Interim District Director Tracy Shibley says as soon as there was an increase in patients testing positive in the ward, it was closed to visitors. She says prevention measures are in place to control the outbreak. Tracy Shibley says the closure is only temporary and is a common measure taken when there is a spike of a contagious virus or infection in a localized hospital area. There are currently 1,596 active cases in Northland.
Elsewhere, outpatient appointments are being postponed at Canterbury Hospital to free up health staff to work in acute care. Southland Hospital has also temporarily closed its inpatient wards to visitors. It could be a week or more until motorists see petrol prices ease, but an industry head says the situation is too volatile to make a call. For the second trading day in a row and the first time in 4 months, Brent crude has fallen below $100 a barrel. But the price of 91 is still averaging more than $3 a litre at the pump. Gull General Manager Dave Bodger has told Checkpoint it's impossible to say whether the drop in international prices will continue.
My crystal wall's been broken for years, and goodness knows what Am I allowed to call them madmen like Putin may do? Hopefully there's a resolution to conflict in the Ukraine. That will open supply. It will be much better for petrol pricing.
Dave Bodger says it's the government's call as to whether the fuel tax cut continues. A husband and wife who both have terminal lung cancer have crowdsourced enough money to pay for a year of unfunded treatment. Graham and Mary Brooke Smith are battling to live as long as they can for their young sons, aged 9 and 11. They're already getting chemotherapy but are raising money for other options like immunotherapy to give them more time. Graham Brooke Smith has told Checkpoint they've already hit over $227,000.
Quite humbling, actually. It's just a short amount of time, and it's just come through to meet our first target. And our first year of treatment will be supported by that money, and all of it will be spent, obviously, towards Mary and my treatment.
Graham Brooke Smith says the couple will need up to 3 years of immunotherapy treatment. The Speaker of Sri Lanka's Parliament says he's still not received President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's resignation letter. The President fled over the weekend amid massive anti-government protests. The BBC's Ambarasan Ethirajan reports.
Sri Lanka's political stalemate continues as there is no immediate sign of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa stepping down as previously announced. Last night he issued a notification appointing Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe as the acting president in his absence. A protest leader said they rejected this move and want Mr. Wickremesinghe to resign as well. Mr. Rajapaksa is currently in the Maldives, but reports said he was trying to reach Singapore. Plans to get there on a commercial flight were reportedly cancelled overnight on security grounds.
The 6 remaining contenders to be the next British Prime Minister will face a second vote by Conservative MPs overnight. The former Chancellor Rishi Sunak won the first round of voting in the leadership race, with Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt second and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss third. The MP Kieran Mullen is backing Ms Mordaunt.
Candidates will have policies that some people like, some people don't like, but what you can come around together is on values. And she is, I think, someone that believes in community, getting things done, caring for each other, but being strong. She is the person that can most appeal to the diverse range of people now under our new coalition that want to vote Conservative.
The candidate with the lowest number of votes tonight will be eliminated. A worker was injured on a building site at the Ohakia Air Force Base in Manawatu today. The Ministry of Defence says the injured worker was treated at a local medical centre. It's understood the incident involved a lift collapsing on the construction site of new hangars. The $250 million hangars will be home to 4 Boeing P-8A Poseidon aircraft and are due to open next year. And drivers in the capital are still getting free parking across the CBD after a technical glitch earlier this morning. The glitch has caused the parking pay and display machines to operate at public holiday settings. Wellington City Council spokesperson Richard McLean says it was an unintentional freebie for the city.
Our providers, the people who look after our parking machinery and our pay and display units, they are obviously working flat out to fix the glitch, and we're pretty confident that things will be back to normal tomorrow morning.
Richard McLean says it's hard to estimate how much money the council's lost today, but it could be in the hundreds or low thousands. In sport, Ian Foster is confident he can guide the All Blacks to a series victory over Ireland. Under pressure following last week's defeat, the All Blacks coach has rung the changes to his starting side for Saturday's third test in Wellington, with league convert Roger Tuivasa-Sheck set to debut from the bench. Sam Whitelock is back from concussion, with Scott Barrett moving to blindside flanker. Backs David Havili and Will Jordan also return to the starting 15. Foster says if the All Blacks play to their ability, they should win.
Tough weeks after a loss, but we just got to keep believing in what we're doing. The first test showed that we're 15 on 15. We've got some good answers at the moment, and we've just got to get better at it.
Ireland have made just one injury-enforced change for the series decider, with midfielder Bundy Aki to start. And tight turnarounds and differing opposition playing styles will challenge the Silver Ferns at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham this month. Stand-in coach Deb Fuller sees tonight's game against the New Zealand men as an opportunity for the players to show how they can adapt their game against taller, more physical opposition. The last time the two sides met last year, the men had a narrow win.
Once you have your foundation of how you want to play, what you want to do with the game, what you want to set up, you adjust to the men's style, you adjust to the mixed style, and that's what will happen in Commonwealth Games, as will back-to-back games. So as we go on, we're always looking at how people respond.
That's the news.
Tonight on Night's nutritionist Amanda Bryan debuts as a new regular guest, talking about the link between low decile neighbourhoods and the choice of fast food suppliers. It's one thing poor folk aren't deprived of. Our changing world goes in search of the Helms stag beetle on Stewart Island. And our podiatrist Emma Worthington is keen to take your questions about the state of your feet midwinter. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
You're back on Checkpoint with Lisa Owen next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Friday. From Northland to Taumaru Nui, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, the Central High Country, and in the east from Gisborne to Waded Upper. Rain from Northland to the Central High Country is spreading elsewhere this evening, with some heavy falls in the north and the east, easing to isolated showers tomorrow, but snow to 900 metres affecting the Desert Road tomorrow morning. From Taranaki to Wellington, mostly cloudy with isolated showers. Fine spells are increasing tomorrow. Mainly fine for Nelson and Marlborough. Isolated showers tomorrow afternoon and evening. Mainly fine also for Bulla Westland and Fiordland, but a few showers in southern Fiordland, and they're developing north of Hokitika tomorrow. Canterbury and North Otago, cloudy periods and isolated showers. For the remainder of Otago and Southland, showers falling as snow to 400 metres tomorrow. And for the Chatham Islands, Rekohu, a few showers, rain for a time tomorrow morning. It's 9 minutes past 6. I'll have the latest news headlines for you at 6:30.
Kia ora rā e ho, no mai hoki mai, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. The Prime Minister has been locked away in talks with leaders of the Pacific Islands today in Fiji's capital Suva. A critical document on how the Pacific nation will navigate climate change has emerged from it. For more, let's go to our political reporter Annika Smith, who is live in Suva. Annika, what's come out of these talks?
Bulavanaka, Lisa. Well, it's felt like a really long day of waiting here in Suva for the 51st Pacific Islands Forum to wrap up, although in the context of the history of this forum, it's not actually long at all. It's still almost light here in Suva. Today we had the significant endorsement and launch of the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. Now this is the blueprint, the roadmap, the vision, whatever word you want to use, for Pacific Island nations who are small in stature to group together and address the issues that affect the entire region. It's been referred to again and again, and it was in talks earlier today as the North Star for the Pacific in terms of dealing with the big issues of the day like climate change and security issues. We've also had an update today about the Suva agreement, that this was the deal struck about a month ago to keep Micronesia in the forum. Now today leaders got together and they have agreed on this Suva agreement. They've all endorsed it, and they've also left the door open to Kiribati, which is a country that's been absent at the forum to date and remains absent, to sign it as well. So the door is open for them there. So quite a bit of movement and some really heavy lifting today.
So you've just spoken to Te Peremia, Jacinda Ardern. What did she have to say?
Yeah, so she pointed out actually that when we spoke to her, it was still light. People might remember the last in-person PIF went till 10:30 at night. So there was quite a jubilant atmosphere, I think, and unity sort of came through quite strong. She confirmed to us that Kiribati, who's been absent from this forum, has actually spoken to the forum's chair, Fiji's Prime Minister, Frank Bainimarama. And the significance of that is that Kiribati withdrew from the forum. People would remember the news going into the forum this week. And the news that Mr Bainimarama has spoken to Kiribati is significant. It means the line of communication there is open, that door has stayed open by the foreign members, and Kiribati is engaging at a level. We don't know the nature of those discussions, but it's a positive development. And on reflections from our Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, she felt that the forum was successful in terms of those face-to-face talks. Of course, it's been 3 years since leaders have gotten together, and there was a real sense that Pacific leaders had finally got face-to-face, that diplomacy had happened today, this week, that wouldn't have otherwise happened if we were in virtual talks, and a real sense of optimism in terms of this region regrouping together at a time of heightened need for climate action in this climate crisis, and also unity in the terms of strategic competition in this region.
Thanks for the update, Annika. That's our political reporter, Annika Smith, joining us live there from Suva. The fallout from the release of video showing the police response to the Uvalde school massacre continues in the US. Parents who lost their children are livid that video surveillance capturing the attack was leaked to news media. All 82 minutes have been posted online. 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered in the tragedy. The BBC's Paul Adams has this report.
The moment 18-year-old Salvador Ramos arrived at Robb Elementary, crashing his pickup truck before approaching the school, armed with a semi-automatic rifle. His movements caught on surveillance cameras. He enters the building, the corridors deserted. Staff have already sounded the alert. A child emerges from the bathroom, spotting Ramos moments before he starts his attack. We're not broadcasting the sound of the gunfire that follows. Within 2.5 minutes, police officers are seen entering the building. They're armed, they can hear shooting, they seem poised to intervene. But apparently fearing for their own safety, they retreat. In the agonising minutes that follow, more heavily armed officers arrive from multiple agencies. Finally, a full hour and a quarter after Ramos entered the classroom, officers go in. 19 students and 2 teachers are already dead. The investigation into what happened and the apparent failures goes on. The video has been known about for weeks, but Uvalde's mayor is furious it's come out now.
But there's no reason for the families to have to see that. I mean, they were going to see the video, but they didn't need to see the gunman coming in and hear the gunshots. They don't need to relive that. They've been through enough. And that was the most chicken way to put this video out today.
For the people of this still traumatised community, the video is a new source of anguish and questions.
All these officers, they got their shield, they got their weapons, they got all their protective gear on, standing there. 911 calls coming in from this child saying, I can hear them tell them to come in. Now that ain't right.
The head of public safety in Texas has called the police response in Uvalde an abject failure, saying the officer in charge put the lives of his men before those of the children.
It's 6:15 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Sri Lanka's Prime Minister has told the military to do whatever is necessary to restore order after protesters stormed his office. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has fled the country and appointed the Prime Minister as acting leader. But the decision has triggered further protests, particularly his hesitation in formally resigning. The BBC's Rajni Vaidyanathan has this report on a dramatic day in Colombo.
Their target heavily guarded. Their mood determined. As news spread that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe had just been made acting president, crowds gathered in front of his office, one of the few government buildings not yet occupied by protesters.
There's a tense standoff now outside the Prime Minister's office in Colombo. Protesters lined up all the way along this avenue, and on the other side here you can see the security forces who are guarding this office, and protesters are chanting that Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Prime Minister, is a thief. They don't just want President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to step down, they want the whole political class to leave, and they want to change.
And this is how they're pushing for that change. A mass movement born out of economic hardship, sending a message to those in power.
We don't want violence and we don't want to hit or something to that Prime Minister who trying to be a president right now. We only want, please resign.
But it didn't take long for security forces to use tear gas and water cannons.
Still trying to climb in. And just over the gate you can see inside there now just how many members of the security forces are in there. And we can feel the tear gas on our skin now. A lot of people here have been tear gassed. But they're not giving up, they still want to get inside. Well, the protesters are getting closer now. There's a standoff there close to the gates now. Protesters moving forward, they are not giving up. And you can see up there, police,
Then a breakthrough. Outnumbering and overpowering the police. Yet another protected building overrun by protesters.
Well, this is quite an extraordinary moment. After hours of trying to make their way in, they've finally done it. Protesters have pushed their way through the gates of the Prime Minister's office. And now everywhere. The security forces, the police, all the armed guards, they're nowhere to be seen. Another public building here in Sri Lanka, which is now being occupied by the people. It really is quite a moment.
But where does that moment go next?
Why did you come here today?
To help my country. I love my country, so I want to come to here and help my country.
But who can save it? As they celebrate, Sri Lankans are still suffering. After taking government buildings, who did they trust to take power?
The race to become Britain's next Prime Minister is heating up. The former Chancellor Rishi Sunak has now won the first round of voting among Conservative MPs. But Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt is following closely behind, and a poll has suggested she will beat Sunak in a runoff. 6 contenders in total remain. The BBC's Chris Mason has more.
The first moment of decision in determining who might be our next Prime Minister, and who definitely won't be.
2 candidates will be eliminated, Jeremy Hunt and Nadhim Zahawi.
The Chancellor and the runner-up in the last Conservative leadership race, beaten by Boris Johnson, both out.
We now know that you won't be our next Prime Minister. Who should be?
I'm supporting Rishi Sunak. This is someone of formidable ability who has been thinking about the right thing to do for our economy.
Earlier, the campaign launch of the Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt, who finished second in today's vote. Another cramped and sweaty affair with a spot of merchandise thrown in. A face that may not be familiar, but soon might be. She's a former Defence Secretary who campaigned for Brexit and whose pitch to be Prime Minister feels, for now at least, like it has some momentum.
I think our party has lost its sense of self. If I can compare it to being in the Glastonbury audience when Paul McCartney was playing his set, we indulged all those new tunes, but what we really wanted was the good old stuff that we all knew the words to. Low tax, small state, personal responsibility.
What do you say to the vast majority of people listening to this morning who've not come across you before and perhaps wonder whether you have it in you to be Prime Minister?
I think that I am one of the best prepared candidates in this contest. I've served in a huge number of ministerial positions. I've also served in the private sector. I've worked in the public sector.
Morning.
How are you? Down the road, at the same time, another contender, former soldier Tom Tugendhat, saying he'd prioritise much more money for the military.
When we're talking about defence spending, we've got to be absolutely clear that we will never put the safety of our country in doubt because of bean counters or spreadsheets.
Who will replace you, Prime Minister? Who has your vote?
The big question, followed by the one he won't answer. But Boris Johnson reckons whoever replaces him will have the measure of Sir Keir Starmer.
Any one of them would wipe the floor with Captain Crasheroony's snooze fest, Mr. Speaker.
The Labour leader teased Mr Johnson about his approach to life after Downing Street.
Finally, he can throw off the shackles, say what he really thinks, and forget about following the rules.
The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss finished third in the vote today to replace Boris Johnson. Tomorrow, as MPs vote again, it's her turn to set out why she should win.
The UK's Metropolitan Police have launched an investigation into claims by Sir Mo Farah that he was trafficked into the country and forced into domestic slavery. The four-time Olympic champion says he was brought to London by a stranger under an assumed name after escaping war in Somalia at the age of 9. Detectives will now question a married couple Sir Mo accuses of forcing him to cook, clean and babysit. He spoke to the BBC's Amor Rajan.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Am I sat over here?
Yeah, just there.
Sir Mo Farah is not the man millions think they know.
I mean, now I've come to terms with it, talking about it, let alone, coming to tell the public and to tell people. I didn't even have the courage to talk to my own member families. It was only Tanya really knew, because I didn't feel comfortable. I felt vulnerable, I felt at times lonely. And if I can't share it myself, how can I share with the whole world?
He shot to national and international fame by winning 2 Olympic gold medals at London 2012. He's one of Britain's most decorated Olympians. He was knighted in 2017 for services to athletics and has become a regular on TV screens and newspaper front pages.
This is the visa to come to the UK.
But in a TV documentary, Farah reveals his real name is Hussein Abdi Kahin and that he was illegally trafficked to the UK as a child for the purposes of domestic servitude.
From day one, the lady, what she did wasn't right. I wasn't treated as part of the family. I was always that kid who did everything. I don't know, more someone like who works for you, who's just, that's your space, that's our space, this is what you do. If I wanted food in my mouth, my job was to look after those kids, shower them, cook for them, clean for them. And she said, if you ever want to see your family again, don't say anything. If you say anything, they will take you away.
He eventually confided in a teacher who helped him alert social services, move to a new family and become a British citizen as Mo Farah. It was then that he discovered running. What was it like for you living this kind of double life and becoming globally famous?
There's a lot I couldn't say, and in my mind as a kid often I try and think about that moment where I made a decision for myself, where I used to lock myself in that bathroom and you cry every day. You cry every day and you tell him, please someone get me out of here, and no one come to you. So you learn to lock that up. So I told myself, I'm not going to get emotional, I'm going to lock that up inside and just carry on. Even myself, it was hard for me to admit what has happened.
The BBC has spoken to the Home Office today and they told us, and I quote, no action whatsoever will be taken against Sir Mo, and to suggest otherwise is wrong. How does that make you feel?
It makes me relieved. For me, this is my country.
As curators at a gallery in Scotland prepared for a summer exhibition showcasing Impressionist art, little did they know they were about to unearth something special that's been hidden from view for more than a century. They've discovered a new self-portrait by Vincent van Gogh, revealed by an X-ray of one of his other works. The BBC's Katie Hunter has more.
Thrilling and incredibly rare is how one senior curator has described the discovery of the self-portrait on the back of Van Gogh's painting, Head of a Peasant Woman. The artist was known to reuse canvases to save money, but the find is believed to be a first for a UK institution. The self-portrait is covered in layers of glue and cardboard. Experts are looking at whether they can remove them without causing any damage. Professor Francis Fowle from the National Galleries of Scotland says it's a significant discovery.
This is really a major and very exciting find for the National Galleries of Scotland. It's so unusual to find a new painting on the back of a canvas like this. Also, it's a good example of a period when Van Gogh was developing his mature, very radical style, the style that we really associate with him.
If the self-portrait can be uncovered, it's expected to help shed new light on Van Gogh's work. The X-ray image will go on public view for the first time in a specially crafted light box at the Royal Scottish Academy in Edinburgh at the end of the month.
And let's get to some more of your feedback. Still a lot of it coming in on COVID. John has got in touch to say, hey, can you please ask someone and tell listeners where we can get the free masks and rat tests? What's the website? We can't find it anywhere. Okay, so they can be picked up basically from the current community providers, including Marae and testing stations and local pharmacies. But you're being asked to order them, request them online so that they know the stocks are available to you. So here's what we're going to do, John. We're going to put a link to that site on our webpage for you. Our wonderful producer Matthew is working on it right now, but the website is requestrats, all one word, .covid19.health.nz. But if you missed that, it's going to be on our webpage, so check it out. Someone else says, free rats, very welcome. My elderly mother has to do a rat test every time she visits her partner in a rest home. At $10 a pop, you can imagine it is impossible for her to visit every day. Incredible to imagine elderly people can pay $70 a week to visit their loved ones. Someone else is asking about the free masks. They want to know if they're K95s or the blue ones. The blue ones are going to be basically available to everyone, and the N95s are going to be available for immunocompromised people. And Nikki has got in touch from Palmerston North to say, my granddaughters are meticulous about keeping their masks on at school. As an over 70, it is possible that they are saving my life. They must love you, Grandma. And someone else says, health workers are doing an exceptional job in increasingly trying circumstances. They need our support. Tautoko that. On the stadium. Oh, this is Peter Morrison, who was on the program earlier. He sung his submission at the Christchurch Council. Someone has said, I wonder if anyone has ever told Peter Morrison he doesn't sing very well. Yeah, but he's got heaps of enthusiasm. So let's high-five him for that. Someone else says, don't understand why the government is paying for bollards. Dairy owners should stop selling cigarettes or ask tobacco companies to pay. People aren't ram-raiding for chewing gum. No, but they have ram-raided for ice cream and chips. They're not just going for the cigarettes. The Late News team is going to keep you updated throughout the night. If you missed anything on the program, you can find Checkpoint on Spotify, Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi pōpō. Tomorrow from 5 a.m, a Northland emergency medical specialist tells First Up why the government has dropped the ball and masks should have always been mandatory in schools and workplaces.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Kia ora tātou, ko Ivy Ashton tēnei. Epidemiologist Michael Baker says mask mandates should be extended to cover nearly all indoor environments. But the COVID-19 response minister, Aisha Verrill, says it's not simple to make that mandatory. It could be a week or more until motorists see petrol prices ease, but the General Manager of Gull says the international situation is too volatile to make a call. And drivers in the capital are still getting free parking across the CBD after a technical glitch earlier this morning. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7.
This week on Music 101, Matthew Young talks honestly about bipolar and his brand new album. Vera Allen performs live. T-Rex the Slider celebrates 50 years. And ahead of the first ever Rolling Stone New Zealand Music Awards, editor Poppy Reid is our guest on the mixtape. Music 101, this Saturday with me, Charlotte Ryan, from 1 p.m. here on RNZ National.
Thanks, Charlotte, and I'm Brian Crump, getting ready for another edition of Nights, which includes the pocket edition of Music 101. After the news at 11, highlights of